Hi friends, I'm Red Stegall. I'm an entertainer, author, and proud Texas rancher. I'm inviting my fellow cattle ranchers to join me in the Alamo statewide Stampede, a simple way to help preserve our Texas heritage. When you sell your livestock, just let the auction house know you'd like some or all of the proceeds to go to the Remember the Alamo Foundation. If you don't have livestock, no problem. You can still take part by making a donation. These tax-deductible donations will go directly to the Alamo Plan, which is preserving the Alamo for generations to come. And together we'll ensure we always remember the Alamo.
Stories bigger than Texas, the Alamo Podcast. With the Alamo under siege, Lieutenant Colonel William Barret Travis penned a letter to the people of Texas and all Americans in the world. His passionate plea for help is now one of the most treasured artifacts in all of Texas. Today, we reveal the successful effort to bring the Travis letter back home to the Alamo for good, the plans for where to display it, and how its words remain so resonant today. I'm your host, Emily Balcom. Today, we are joined by Alamo Trust, Inc. Executive Director, Dr. Kate Rogers, the Alamo Senior Historian, Ernesto Rodriguez, the Alamo Senior Researcher and Historian, Kolby Lanham, and the Alamo's Collections Manager, Misty Lanham. Thank you all for being here.
The gang's all here, Emily.
This is an Alamo expert tour de force. I'm so excited to have you all in one room. Kate, let's start with the bill in the Texas legislature and its journey to finally bring the Travis letter home.
There was a bill passed this past legislative session, which just ended in the spring, and it was put forward by Representative Cody Harris from Palestine, Texas, House Bill 1397. And basically what it said is that temporarily the letter will be on display in the Capitol, and then when the new visitor center and museum is done here at the Alamo, that it will find its way back to the Alamo where it was penned all those many years ago. I think the overwhelming sentiment from the members of the legislature was that, it's a shame to have such a critical document housed in a basement where people can't see it. They can't appreciate the words that he wrote way back in 1836. And so to have it on display, I think, was the ultimate goal.
Kate, this bill passed with bipartisan support. It was signed by the governor, and the law went into effect just a few days ago on September 1st.
September 1st is when all of the things that were passed in the 2025 session actually went into effect. So we're super excited because it's about to be real.
Ernesto, I've heard you say in many interviews, the Travis letter is one of those artifacts you just don't get to see very often, but it is at the heart of who we are as Texans.
Yes, it is. It's one of those really important pieces of paper that's written with a goal in mind. And when you read the letter, it's to the people of Texas and all Americans in the world. It's a call for help. But Travis made a conscious decision to choose the people he wants to help. He knows that if that letter makes it out, it'll be published, it'll make it to the United States. And there's grandfathers that fought in the American Revolution that'll read the letter and they'll see key phrases as patriotism, honor, American character, and then victory or death, which was the call sign that George Washington used as they crossed the Delaware. That will draw them to say, son, you know what you need to do. Americans need you. So it is one of the most important documents to be written by an individual from the Alamo, and it calls to people even to this day.
You've worked at the Alamo more than 25 years. Do people come here expecting to see the letter?
Yes, they do. They come expecting to see the letter, and now that the law has changed, I'm excited because people will actually be able to come and witness one of the most important pieces of our history.
The Travis letter has only returned to the Alamo twice, in 2013 and in 2024. Misty, you were part of the very long lines to come see it in 2013. Can you please share your memories of that day?
Absolutely. So we came, in hindsight, probably not on the best day, Texas Independence Day. We were feeling very patriotic, but that probably made the lines longer. But it was actually really great because as we stood in line, I was there with my mom and my brother. The Texas Independence Day ceremony was going on. So Commissioner Patterson was up there. He was giving this really fiery Texas patriotic speech. We sang Deep in the Heart of Texas and Texas or Texas in the line. Everyone was clapping and cheering. And so it really set a fun tone. But then he was also talking about the importance of the letter being here and that it was the first time it had come back. So it was this kind of turning point for me personally because I was going to school at Stephen F. Austin at the time for public history. And I was telling my mom and my brother about the Travis letter and about the significance of it being here and about him having this moment, kind of the line in the sand moment, that they were having to decide whether they were going to stand and fight or whether they needed to try to get out of town, basically, and that they were choosing to stay and fight. They knew likely what fate awaited them. And my mom started crying, and she's not all that much into history. And so I was like, wow, I'm going to school for the right thing. This is good. This is awesome.
And that day, a career was born. How long did you stand in line for?
At least 6 hours. And we hadn't anticipated that because we did not take a restroom break before. And also we were very hungry. We thought we were going to, pop in after maybe an hour or two and then run and get lunch. And it was probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe even later by the time we got to the doors. And I know Ernesto tells the story. They were going and they were trying to help people get through the church and get through a little bit quicker.
Ernesto, what are your memories of those long lines?
What was interesting is that no matter how long the line got, people were not in a bad mood. They were really excited to see this. And we made it a point that if you were in line at 5:30, you were still going to be able to see the letter because
So even though the Alamo has closed for the day, you still get to
you
stay.
still got to see the letter. We had a staff member, typically it'd be Dr. Winders, that would dress up and he'd walk all the way to the back and he would stand at the back of the line and come with the group and they'd go through. And as soon as the last person went through to see the letter, we'd close the doors, clean the cases, and then get ready for the evening events because we had so many events happening that my days were from about 6:30 in the morning to about 11:30 at night. But it was exciting.
Well, fast forward 11 years. Ernesto, Misty, Kolby, you all worked together to facilitate its safe return last year. What was it like not only to be here when the letter arrived, but to be part of the team putting it on display?
That was just a huge honor for us. We all worked together to make the case, put it together, make sure it was going to be safe when it was displayed. We had a dedicated room and space because the Ralston Family Collection Center was completed by that point. We touch a lot of history on a daily basis, some really, really amazing artifacts, but this was different. This was something that was touched by a hero from the Battle of the Alamo. You could feel the kind of the resonance in the room, and even the people who were there to protect the letter from DPS were very giddy and very excited. And so I think you could just kind of feel the electricity in the room. It was a really good day.
Misty, you went from waiting 6 hours in line the first time around to the second time you got to hold the letter and put it in the case. What did that feel like?
Actually, I had a little anecdote. My grandma teased me a little bit because Kolby got a picture of me putting it, like helping to make sure that it gets in the case and it sits correctly in the case. But there was a little like thumbprint smudge. And so I went and I got the things to clean it. And so he has this picture of me cleaning this smudge off of the glass. And actually that was such a highlight for me because nobody else wanted to like get into the case. I had 2 or 3 DPS like right around me breathing down my neck. And here I am cleaning this little smudge. And she was like, that's your great grandma all over, like cleaning things all the time.
I love that story. So let's talk about what's next. Kate, the obvious home for the Travis letter is the Alamo's future visitor center and museum, scheduled to open in 2027. How are we preparing for it to be part of the museum experience?
Well, there's a few things. First of all, believe it or not, even though we're still a couple years away from the grand opening of the new museum, the team, Misty and many others, have already selected almost all of the artifacts that will be displayed in all 8 galleries. So this letter, because it is so precious and so beloved, it will have its own case. We have to be very sensitive to light, temperature, humidity. It's a very fragile document. It hasn't always been cared for as sensitively as one would hope. And so there has been some fading over the years. So I think there's 2 things we want to take into consideration. The first and foremost is its protection for the long term and for future generations. And second, to put it in a place where it's really visible, you can actually read it, and to think about what was going through his mind at that time.
In the meantime, the bill does allow for the Travis letter to go on display at the state capitol. As we await more details on that, we know the letter is very fragile. As Kate just said, it needs proper lighting and proper care. And Misty, the Alamo is prepared to provide that care in concert with the Texas State Library and Archives Commission.
Oh, yes, we are. And I don't think that it would be overstating in any way to say that we have actually designed the room that it will go in around what it needs. Not just the case, but the room, to be able to take really great care of it.
And as Kate said, conservation in the late 1800s, when they first started to display this letter, very different than in 2025.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
The proper lighting, not displaying it anywhere near sunlight, for example.
That's correct. And so I know TSLAC has worked very hard at it whenever we borrowed it this last time around. There were a lot of conversations about making sure that we kept it in the best possible condition that we could. We monitored every single day, every hour, everything that we possibly could to make sure that we were good custodians of it.
When it does get here, we really have an opportunity to display the Travis letter alongside related artifacts and truly tell a chronological story.
Yeah, I think that's important to know. When visitors go through, there's going to be a buildup to portions of these galleries that, it'll give the visitor an idea of some of the tensions that were happening not only in Texas, but the greater area of the American Southwest and Mexico. And as you go into these areas, it'll be kind of like a crescendo when you get to this point, and it'll kind of all come together for the viewer.
What are some of the artifacts we have to tell the story? For example, the doors to the Trevino house behind which Travis would have written the letter.
Yes, we do have the doors for the Trevino house. And when they came the last time, we were able to display the doors and the receipt for the 30 heads of beeves, something that had never happened before.
Why is that receipt important?
It's important because most people assume that Travis rounded up these cattle, but no, he purchased them from a local rancher, Ignacio Perez. And it's really important because it shows that there's actual bills being sent to this new government to pay for things in IOUs. And that document's really important to us because 1, 30 heads of beeves are mentioned. 2, Ignacio Perez, a local rancher. And 3, Francisco Ruiz, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, is actually the one that pays the bill. So it's really important. But one of the fun parts about the letter is that we'll be able to talk about the Battle of Bear and how that led to the defenders of the Alamo coming in, led to the famous letter of February 24th, and led to Texas independence. So all history is connected. And what we're doing is connecting 300 years of history so that our guests will come and hopefully leave with a question.
If the headline of that letter is victory or death, underlined 3 times, the postscript people have largely forgotten about, but you're saying we can tell a whole story just from a PS about securing cows.
Yes, you can. You think about what were they eating, right? We all eat. It draws you to a moment in which he goes from asking for help to saying, we have this. And when you think about Texas being cattle country, when you see beeves, when you see corn, well, you get corn, you get beef, you make a taco. And that's the really cool thing is that it draws people to the human element.
Kate, this is one more piece of the puzzle when it comes to the $550 million Alamo plan to bring back reverence to the historic site.
Absolutely. I think this letter, as Ernesto mentioned, what we want the visitor to do is place themselves into William B. Travis's shoes. He's a very young man at this time, only 26 years old. He's in charge now of this garrison of volunteer men who have come to defend the Alamo. The Mexican army arrives the day prior, and he basically says in the letter, we're going to fight. We're going to stay here. We will sustain ourselves as long as we can, but we need help. And calling on others, Americans, people filled with American pride far and wide, to come to his aid. And as we know, not many people did. But to think about that young man and the bravery and courage that would have taken, a willingness to put everything on the line at that moment in time. And what I hope is that visitors will think about, what would I write if I were in those shoes? Who would I write to? What would I say to my family if I was prepared to die for something that I believed in so strongly? What would I say?
As we move into a time when the Travis letter will be far more accessible than it's ever been, what do you as historians and members of the collection and curations team hope people who see it in person take away from the experience?
Kind of what Kate just touched on is really important, that people can almost see a part of themselves in that letter and the words that he wrote. I really hope that people walk away with a better love for history and understanding of what that document means. I always think about young children when they come to the Alamo, and can we capture a couple of those young minds and maybe they end up becoming historians or just lovers of history. But I would say it's never too late to fall in love with the Alamo story. So hopefully it moves some adults into that category as well.
One of the things too is that you can make a difference. Even though help doesn't make it here as fast as we would like, they do start to gather a Gonzalez, and he made a difference. So one person can make a difference, and that's the important thing. You may not be able to see the effects of your work, but you can change the course of history. And it's a really strong letter. And if you think about modern society, it probably wouldn't come out the same. Emoji, little sad face emoji, sorry, But this is a person sitting down and putting his soul on paper. And that's the most important thing, is that when you see it, you can actually understand an individual's ideals, his wants, his needs, because it's a desperate plea for help.
Feeling ownership, feeling connection to the story, feeling a place in history in so many ways. And it's very exciting that we will have the opportunity to be able to make this available to the public more frequently. We'll definitely be rotating it to make sure that we're taking really good care of it. But instead of a 2-week window or a 1-week window, we'll be able to share it a little bit more consistently. Of course, we're following the standards that we typically would in taking care of it. But the issue that we've had in the past is that we are able to give this time frame, but perhaps people aren't able to come and see it. So if they're able to plan a little bit more in advance, or if that window is a little bit bigger, more people will be able to come enjoy it and relate to it and feel all of these things that the others have talked about.
Dr. Kate Rogers, Ernesto Rodriguez, Kolby Lanham, and Misty Lanham, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Emily.
Be sure to check out the podcast notes. We've linked to a bonus rewind episode from our archives all about the Travis letter that was recorded right before it visited the Alamo last year. We've also linked to a video from that time showing it on display in the Alamo exhibit at the Ralston Family Collection Center. You've been listening to Stories Bigger Than Texas, the Alamo Podcast.